Can I also pay my respects? I'm a Gungaloo man from central Queensland. I was just saying to the Minister, I've travelled all around the country and they look at Gooda and think it's some sort of version of Aboriginal English, but it's actually an English name, and if you just travel out a little bit towards Yass, you'll come across a Gooda Creek. And I remember telling Matilda, who did a welcome to country for me in the early stages of my time in this position, that when she talked about Ngambri people walking around here, I said my people also walked around here, and right throughout the presentation I can see her looking at me and scowling and thinking he comes from central Queensland, he's not Ngambri. But I had to tell her later on I was honouring my white ancestors. And they walked around here actually before Canberra was created. So I'm a bit of a, we have Aboriginal people finding their roots and all that in the Aboriginal world. I'm doing the reverse. And it's a great journey to be on. For the first time in my life, I now have white relations. So I've done the reverse that a lot of people do. Can I give a bit of a background on Close the Gap? 8 years ago, Tom Kalmer started the whole thing going, and he framed the disparity between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and the non-Indigenous Australian population in a health sense, the gap as a health, not just a health issue but a human rights issue, because part of our job as Social Justice Commissioner is to monitor the enjoyment and exercise of human rights by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. And having put that in that framework, it actually gave us the impotence to move forward, that we weren't just stuck in a health paradigm, that there's a whole lot of things that happen outside the health system that impact on our health. And I was fortunate enough to be at the first meeting that Tom called as the CEO of the Cooperative Research Centre for Aboriginal Health. And then when I came into this job, I got the job as co-chair of the Close the Gap campaign. And every year it's gone forward, and we struggle with this. How do you maintain interest in a campaign spanning something like 20 years? We still have 16 years to go to reach the target date of 2030. And we struggle with it. But this year and every year we have an increase in the number of people participating in this day. Last year was just under 1,000. This year we're just under 1,300. 1,263, I think, and it seems every time Andy Gargett takes a phone call, the numbers are increasing. So you can see this is I've described today for the rest of Australia as a low-key way of sending messages to government. Not a loud way of shouting a message, of getting a point across that we see so much in the body politic here in Australia, but a low-key way of having morning teas, of kids in Nowra having a photo shop, a photo booth with taking messages that we want to send to government about Close the Gap. They're doing a mural down in Nowra. We had a picnic in the park beside Central Railway Station in Sydney this morning. Schools just having morning teas, businesses having morning teas. And it's a way, particularly this year, to send a message to government that this is important to Australia. I've described Closing the Gap as a nation-building exercise that spans generations. It's not going to be solved in the term of a Social Justice Commissioner, 5 years, in the term of one government, 3 years. This is something that we've got to buy into, and that's why in the past I've said it's great that we're looking at a time frame that ends in 2030, because I think one of the problems we've had in Aboriginal affairs in the past is we haven't understood the magnitude of the problem confronting us. And unless you understand that, you're never going to solve it. And at least we've got the bipartisan support across all parties in Parliament to support this. And it's great to have us out of being a political football like we've been used in the past. I still think we need some creative tension between the parties, and I think that's useful, but principally we're not being played as, like I said, political footballs. So today is a great day for us, particularly in the Human Rights Commission. We, along with Oxfam, have taken, we take a lot of pride in the work that we've contributed to, and I think at this stage it's appropriate that I pay my respects to Oxfam for the support they give us. Tanya Hosh, who works in Recognise, said, I thought I knew about campaigning till I met Mark Textor and Tim Gartrell. And it's the same with us in the health area. We thought we knew about lobbying and all that till we started to mix with Oxfam, and it tells us we learn from the experts. I think we like to also think about this. Since the big injection of funds, which has been described rightly as the biggest injection of funds in Aboriginal health since Federation back in 2007, 4,000 jobs have been created in the Aboriginal health sector. The Aboriginal health sector accounts for 14% of jobs, and the Prime Minister and the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Nigel Scullion, have said jobs and employment are really a big part of that. And we've done a submission to Twiggy Forrest's inquiry, and the point we wanted to make about the health sector, and I think this is particularly true of the allied health sector, is we want to get away from doing training for training's sake. When I was a young fellow in Brisbane, we used to joke about an Aboriginal fellow up there who was going to get long service leave on training programs. But that doesn't happen in the health sector. I've seen people start in my area of research, driving cars, end up doing masters of research, probably going to end up doing a PhD. We have doctors, you know, it's only 30 years ago since we had our first doctors. 30 years later, we're on the same level of parity with New Zealand with Indigenous doctors, and they had their first doctors nearly 130 years ago. So you can see how we've made those progress really quickly, but it's building capacity, and particularly in an allied health area with social workers, with physios, with people like that. They get real training and real jobs, and it's really happening in the health sector better than any other sector that we have. If you enter the health sector, you're going to end up in a job, you're going to get trained, but you're going to put that training to use. So, Minister, I think it's really good to take that message back to the Prime Minister when we do talk about the employment area, that the Aboriginal health sector is the biggest employer of Indigenous people in the country, and I think we do it better than most, and it's something that we ask Twiggy's mob to have a look at. When you want to do training and into real jobs, come and look at what we're doing in the health sector. We've got a few guests to get through, so can I please introduce the Honourable Fiona Nash, Deputy Leader of the Nationals in the Senate and Assistant Minister for Health.